first met Rebecca on a Zoom meeting, first impressions were of somebody who was longing to tell their story, had so many imaginative ideas about how this could be represented by an artist. There was this willingness to have the whole of that vulnerability, that 4 years of medical procedure, allowed to be shown.
I was diagnosed in 2019, and unfortunately what we thought was just a little lump turned into quite a large tumour. So that led on to surgeries that were long and hard, and then I started my chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Yeah, leading up to the surgeries was really frightening. I was really terrified of having a scalpel on my face. Yeah, that was a really difficult time waiting for that surgery to happen. I was referred to the prosthetic department and met Paul, who was lovely. I met Rachel because she was sitting in with Paul, and we were chatting in the appointment, and she was telling me all about her PhD. I just thought how amazing it was, and with my background of nursing, I've always been involved in research and patient journey and making things better, and it just seemed a really positive thing to be involved in.
So one of the key areas that we work in as restorative dentists is in the rehabilitation of patients with head and neck cancer. And as a specialty registrar, we do a lot of work with these patients, and you can start to learn about the challenges they face, where the kind of key areas that we need to improve in the rehabilitation processes. So there's 3 key things that patients wanted us to change about the process. So firstly, they wanted to get rid of that uncomfortable facial impression. Secondly, they wanted to try and improve the design outputs that were produced and improve the aesthetic outcomes. And then thirdly, to try and improve the efficiency of rehabilitation so that they could get the prosthetic much quicker during that process. Facial prostheses are made by maxillofacial prosthetists who spend up to about 6 appointments making a prosthesis.
I started in 1979, so that's 45 years, and today I retire. When I first see the patient, obviously I've got to take an impression, so this is an example of a facial impression. So I carve it in wax, and then I'll do a colour match. I've got to flask it, syringe the silicons into place, and then put in the background silicon afterwards, close it all up, put it under pressure, put it in the oven for an hour and a half, and then take it out, and we're virtually ready, apart from some extrinsic colouring that I do later. I've always done it is by taking impressions, and it was reasonably easy, but on some of them where there's big defects, it's quite scary.
Having that substance poured on my face and then setting hard to pull it off was quite a tug, which made me quite frightened. It might pull more skin off.
I would say in the lab, at least 15 hours, at least 2 full days work, I would think. But it can be more than that. You can go and it not be right, and then you have to come back, redo.
In a computer-aided manufacturing workflow, there will be 3 key steps. So firstly, some form of facial scanning to acquire all the data that we need to make the facial prosthesis. Secondly, some sort of computer-aided design to help potentially make more predictable outcomes. And then thirdly, some form of 3D printing technology to try and speed up the manufacture as well.
The digital scanner it's just so easy. You just sit in the chair and it's just a scan around your face. No one touches your face. It builds up on the screen. The image gets saved on the computer, so it's kind of less appointment.
3D technology is absolutely brilliant, and it really does save me time. It helps me position the eyes and everything, but you still need me. You still need me to just give it the finer detail and to finish it off.
It could potentially be cost effective to our NHS if we introduce digital technologies into this area, but the data and the evidence that's out there is really early, so we need to do a lot more research to better understand it.
The prosthetic for me, that is a journey. I think that the Facial prosthetics are so realistic. They do give you confidence. They do give you your face back. For me, it's a confidence thing, and that's what I need to just grow into. You know, that's part of acceptance of the whole journey. You know, I look in the mirror in the morning and I have to clean, and then once the prosthetic's on or on my patch, whichever I choose to wear, then I'm ready for the day. But it's a psychological, ongoing thing that's never forgotten.
After the surgery, I knew things were going to be difficult. It closed the door, but several more opened thereafter. And life goes on, and I'm learning all the time. My knowledge of farming back then was minuscule, and I picked a hell of a lot up in the time since then.
I'm Still Me is a arts and science collaborative public engagement project that's trying to share some of the research that we've been doing at the University of Leeds over the past few years, and also share people's experiences who live with facial prosthetics. For me, making a facial prosthesis really brings together the arts and science, and in the UK, maxillofacial prosthetists typically come from like a science and technology background, but actually there's a huge artistic component in what they do too. So we knew whenever we brought this work together that we wanted to share both the arts and the science.
The idea that then was coming to me that could I get a group of artists to paint the different patients, and the artists would have some different styles, and possibly the patients might choose different artists to paint them depending on whichever style they like. That was part of the idea. I think the artists were all very honoured to be doing this, and were also very aware of the sensitivity of what they were painting and the delicacy of painting people who'd had their faces altered in these ways.
As soon as I heard about it, I just knew I really wanted to do it. I just thought, oh, that's great. And I was not nervous, but didn't quite know what to expect in every aspect. When I met him, he hadn't had any prosthetic treatment, and he was quite, it was a bit of a low point for him. He came all wrapped up and everything, and it made me realise it was a big deal for him to come out and meet someone.
You put the trust in the artist to bring me out of them, and I think you've done that.
Well, you were very generous with your time, and your personality really comes across as soon as you meet you, so.
I'm having this out there, you know, so people can look at it, and thankfully you've been brilliant enough to actually capture the anger and the darkness.
The emotion that you've captured in there is just immense. It's exactly what I wanted. I thought how do you paint an emotional event, you know, but it's there. I can almost feel it happening. I think for me the texture of the prosthetic, it's still quite a hard silicone plastic that's not very supple. So facial expressions, I feel I miss the facial expressions, but that's not not to be said that won't happen in the future. With further research, anything's possible.
So in the future, I think there's a lot more work we could do in this area. I'd like to work again with patients and the public to really keep them at the centre of everything that we do, and identify the next key challenges to tackle. I'm sure there's probably been even more technological developments out there in the past few years that we could potentially introduce into our work. I think the lasting impact that we would like to have achieved is to have built this culture of collaboration and engagement, and to have connected all these different professionals, patients, artists together to really amplify the voices of those who need it most.